into Special Rules West area, it is very important for you to maintain a height, given height of 2,000 feet or below. Here you can see that the Cape Town TMA starts at 2,500 feet. If you go through the AIP ENR section, ENR 2.2, it says that all VFR traffic routing in the Special Rules area, maximum height vertical is 2,000 feet. So that's to ensure that we have a 500-foot buffer between Special Rules and the lower limit of the Cape Town TMA, i.e. controlled airspace approach control. Okay, so keep a good lookout when you're flying towards the Kenilworth area, because you're going to have traffic hovering in this area, orbiting, routing inbound or outbound from, and everybody should be talking on 125.8. You obviously also need to be speaking to Cape Town if you're routing inbound. So you're first going to speak to Cape Town when you way before Kenilworth to advise them of your intentions. Their frequency in this case would be Cape Town CTR, which is 118.1. Communicate with Cape Town Tower, advising of your intentions, and they'll hand you back over to the Special Rules West for broadcast. And it's very important that you update everybody as to your intentions, and that you let everybody know that you're here in the Kenilworth area for the joining procedures. All right, so highlighting the Bottleray Hills, the Kenilworth race course, which is quite clearly visible from the air as well. For all those people, those of you that have flown in the area, I'm sure you'll agree it's not too hard to identify. When you are operating to the west or to the east of this line, let's just put my red line in there again to indicate. So we're referring to that line, which is the dividing line for the Special Rules in west and east. Basically, to the west and to the east, we're looking at an approximate distance of 50 nautical miles in either direction. To the north, we're looking at an approximate distance from the boundary of the Cape Town CTR of approximately 30 nautical miles, and to the south, so again in this direction here, that will just be to the border of the boundary of this Cape Town CTR and entering the what's called the danger airspace, the FAD 143, which belongs to the military. So this is not a perfect circle type airspace where it's exactly the same distance on either side, and in terms of the the frequencies that you're going to be broadcasting on, that it's all perfectly designed. It's very important for you to understand your airspace, know the local layout of the airspace, and that's why I said earlier, just looking at this aeronautical chart, it gives you a good idea as to the scope of the airspace itself. But if you do not know the geography of the area, you will struggle slightly with identifying where are the key points to the controlled airspace against the uncontrolled airspace, i.e. the Special Rules area. So if we, sorry, let me just rub myself off there. There we go. So if we're looking at to the, on this side, we're looking at the Special Rules area to the east. We have the Bottleray Hills area, as we said earlier, which is routing from approximately, I'm just struggling to see on this chart here. So it's somewhere over there. As I say, it's not very clearly marked over here. And at the Bottleray Hills, you've got the northern slopes and the southern slopes of the Bottleray Hills. Very important, those two reference points. Northern slopes is taking you more or less in the direction of Passantekraal, and the southern slopes, so this point over here, is taking you not directly there, but it's taking you towards Stellenbosch, the Stellenbosch area. So ATC will give you the guideline as well, the reference. They're either going to tell you route via the northern slopes or route via the southern slopes of the Bottleray Hills. Sometimes they may not use that term, northern or southern. You will know, depending on which way you're routing, as to which part of the Bottleray Hills you have to route towards in order to route towards the direction that you headed. If we look, let me just rub that off. So taking that off, if we're routing along the seawards of the coastline, the third option that it said, so that's along here now, seawards of the coastline, and we want to do joining. In fact, let me just take that off because that's not 100% correct what I'm saying. If you want to join from here, so seawards, somehow I've changed to black now, but well, I'm just continuing. So you're routing in from Muizenberg, so that was coming in from here, or coming in from the Strand area. Then you're going to route seawards of the coastline, and it's very important there that one's not too complicated because obviously you've got the coastline as your guide reference. But what we're going to do shortly is explain things like the FAP 33 or 33, which is over here with that circle, which is a prohibited airspace, which you need to be well familiar with. Coming in from the Muizenberg side, you fairly, there's not too much to affect. You're going to call them either passing the beam of Muizenberg, but majority of aircraft call them from this section over here. That's the Marina de Gama area, Sunflay, as some of the locals will know the area, and that's where you're going to call, or at least have called Cape Town for joining instructions by then. If not, and you call them over here, don't be surprised if they tell you to route to Kenilworth for joining, even though you're down here and you could join the airspace. You're giving them very short notice, so they're going to need to plan. Remember, they can't just accommodate you off the spot at times because the airspace is saturated with other IFR traffic. So in which case they're going to route you towards Kenilworth. Okay, I'm going to explain this FAP 33 shortly. I hope everyone is with me so far and understanding, has a bit of a better idea as to the area itself. So just to recap, special rules west 125.8, special rules east 124.8. The extremity vertical, the vertical height extremity for traffic within this airspace is 2,000 feet, and that's to ensure that there's a buffer of 500 feet between traffic in the special rules area and the lower limit of the Cape Town TMA. Local reference points, Kenilworth Racecourse, Bottleray Hills, and seawards of the coastline for traffic wishing to join the Cape Town CTR. ATC will also use those reference points for traffic exiting the CTR. There are other key reference points for the Cape Town CTR, but information you'd obtain from your flying school. It's local knowledge to identify with the outline, with the boundary of this airspace. If you are looking for further information on this, it's available for free on the Talking Radio website. Just go to the download section, www.talkingradio.co.za, and under the downloads, you'll find all the reference points you need for most of the controlled airfields in South Africa. Okay, I'm going across to the next slide to explain further. So with this slide 3, we're talking about, still there's the line, you can see it there in my fancy black pen now, and that line happens to be going through, and that's obviously the split for the special rules area, is going through the FAD 200. So the FAD 200 stands for the Delta 200, and that's a general flying training area. So what's very significant here to take note of is that although you are going to be flying either to the west or to the east of this dividing line for special rules, remaining clear of controlled airspace, all traffic that's going to route inside the proximity of the FAD 200 is going to have to change frequency to that area specific frequency. In this case, it's a GF, it's a general flying area, civilian training area. So if you look on the next slide, this is extracted directly out of the ARP ENR section 5. This section gives you the limits to the airspace itself, from ground to 2,000 feet, and that is to the southern side of the CTR, of the general flying area, and to the north from ground to 4,000 feet. So you can see it steps up. Let me just go back. I can't go back a slide now. That steps up in terms of the airspace that you are flying in this case, the GF. And for that area, their frequency is 124.4. So here it is, again, I can show it better now. there you can see the airspace going in a kind of a northerly direction, and it splits. Oh, let me just draw the whole GF so you can see it coming down, coming along there, and down to there. This section over here is ground to 2,000 feet, so that's this section over here. And then the section on this side, as I referred to, is ground to 4,000 feet. So very important, inside here, even though you're to the west or east of the center line for the special rules area designated, you will be broadcasting your intentions on 124.4. Key reference point there is Atlantis, so I'll just draw a line around it. For traffic operating in this area, remember this is uncontrolled, so what we need to look at here in terms of special rules, it's also uncontrolled, but generally traffic flying in the special rules area are routing from one point to another, so they're normally flying straight and level. Traffic in the general flying area are routing there to go and do training, general flight training. So when you're flying in this area, you normally expect the unexpected, although I'm not saying you mustn't expect the unexpected in the special rules area, because we are dealing with various types of aircraft, different types of operations, and anything can happen in these airspaces. So it's so important for you when you're flying in any special rules area that you ensure that you broadcast your intentions and keep all traffic advised of your movement throughout. All right, so let's move on. For this section over here, or this slide, I just wanted to highlight this section over here. So that's Seal Island. And I wanted to make you well aware that the Seal Island falls inside the Cape Town CTR and not in the special rules area. So if you intend specifically flying a scenic flight in the Seal Island area, you need permission from Cape Town ACC. So you need to be in contact with ACC either prior or prior to liftoff, or prior to departure, or prior to entering the CTR. You can't just enter that airspace without permission. Now, this is also quite important to note that this hatchery, so these lines that are all along here, okay, I'm just drawing two there as an example. Everything that's inside of that hatchery is called the FAR 149. So this is what we referred to earlier. This is military airspace. It's restricted. Once again, straight out of your AIP ENR Section 5. This is referring to military airspace. Now you need permission from the military to enter this airspace. You also need to know when they are active and when they're inactive, whether you're entering this airspace or not. So before you get airborne, find out, have a look at your NOTAMs, Notice to Airmen, contact Cape Town Air Traffic Control and ask them, is the FAR 149 active? And they'll be able to tell you straight away. This will ensure that you do not enter this airspace unannounced, especially when they're operational. And during operational, they could be doing numerous exercises. There's nothing, they don't have to be very specific as to what they're going to do to the general aviation community. They can conduct their training within that airspace, within a specified time frame, and through the interaction through a NOTAM, all the information is already supplied there. So rather than be surprised, identify with procedures prior to getting airborne, and take note as well that the FAR 149 stretches almost all the way down towards Cape Point, as you can see by this corner picture, this corner reference over here. It's pretty much all the way down towards Cape Point, and then coming across here towards Springle Bay in the False Bay area. This is a serious amount of airspace that you need to be aware of. While we're on this slide, so just some other key reference points here. Take note that the FAR 144 from ground to 2,000 feet, let's just draw a line around it. That's the Cape of Good Hope, so the Cape Point Nature Reserve, this area here, also with the hatcheries as indicated. You're not allowed to fly over the reserve lower than 2,000 feet altitude as indicated. So although it falls in the special rules area, you need to fly around it. Okay? You can't fly through it. And remember, you can't fly here above 2,000 feet, because then we are starting to enter the Cape Town TMA and we need to avoid that airspace. So in terms of flying special rules, be very strict on yourself, do your homework, identify with procedures to be managed, and altitudes that you're restricted to, and of course, most importantly, the frequency that you should be on when flying in that area. Okay, if we just go to the next slide. Now, on this next slide, Joe, I just wanted to, you've seen the slide before when I referred to the Seal Island. Now, what I want to just identify or allow you to identify with is if you're flying in the Special Rules West area, so I'm flying seawards of the coastline here, and I wish to continue with my flight remaining seawards of the coastline, and I want to route to the eastern side. So I want to go basically from 125.8 to 124.8 in the southern area. Then what I'm going to have to do is get permission. Sorry, man. Getting too active with this pen of mine. So what you would need to do is you'd need to get permission from Cape Town ACC to route through their through their controlled airspace. And once you are clear of the controlled airspace and clear of this prohibited airspace, which I'll explain now, and you cleared, and they tell you to continue with TIBA, then you would go from 125.8 to 124.8. If you've never heard of the word TIBA before, so this is in the AIC. TIBA stands for Traffic Information Broadcast by All Aircraft, and TIBA includes uncontrolled frequencies such as 124.4, which is your general flying area, and 124.8, which is generally a frequency used throughout South Africa for traffic flying below 1,500 foot AGL in uncontrolled airspace. And it just so happens that the Special Rules area has also got that frequency to the east, 124.8. So it includes the Special Rules area frequencies as well. So if you ever hear that term being used, you know that the person or the party is operating on one of those particular uncontrolled airspace frequencies. All right. Also, very important, you shouldn't, if you're routing along here, don't sneak through this airspace and route through Cape Town CTR. That's not the right thing to do. You need to communicate with Cape Town. Remember, they've got controlled aircraft or traffic entering their controlled airspace, coming to land on runway 01. They're coming right through your flight path, and you're affecting their flight path. So they don't know about you, neither does ATC. Communication is important. Unless you have a radio failure, keep your communication open at all times. In other words, maintain two-way communication, either with ATC, in this case flying through the controlled airspace, or broadcast your intentions on the relevant Special Rules frequency for all traffic in your area. All right, now we go on to our next slide. Let's see if it's going for me. And there we go. So on this one, this was just to highlight again, it's straight from AIP ENR Section 5, prohibited airspace. You have a lot of FAP, FAR, and FAD airspaces within your Cape Town Special Rules area. This one is your FAP prohibited. So FAP 33 means no aircraft allowed to fly into this airspace at all. And there's your reference from the ground. Geographical reference is Macassar Beach. And if we go on to the next slide, it tells us a little bit about the FAP 33. So if we look down at the end, it says FAP 33 Fir Grove, and it specifies no person shall in any aircraft whatsoever fly into this area. So you have to avoid that area. If you're not sure where it is, as I said earlier, get an aeronautical chart, ask people, speak to ATC, and identify with us. When you're planning your flight, it's way better to plan it on the ground and work your flight so that you're going to avoid these airspaces rather than getting airborne and then finding out that you actually have entered an airspace without permission. All right, so your reference back to the AIP is crucial, but I'm not saying that you have to purchase or own an AIP. There are flying schools out there, and there are operators, and of course there's the Civil Aviation Authority that can always help you with these type of questions. Pre-plan, very important. Right, I brought this slide into it as well. Was once again, we're flying on the Special Rules West area, and yeah, you'll notice it says the FAR 39, FAR 39. And in this airspace, what's important to take note of is we are going to, if we're flying over there and we're routing along seawards of the, we're routing inland, so we're not routing seawards of the coastline, because that would take us into military restricted, the FAR 149, which we mentioned earlier. We are not allowed again to enter Simonstown's airspace, even though we fly in Special Rules West. So we would need to fly around this airspace. But as you remember earlier, if we fly around it, we're going to fly in the direction of the Cape Point Nature Reserve. So it becomes a bit difficult routing around this airspace and avoiding. So what a lot of traffic do, fortunately enough, I have flown in this airspace myself during my PPL training. A lot of traffic route this way, and they route through go through Sun Valley and come out on the other side by Noordhoek. So you bypass all of this restrictions as such. Makes your flight path much easier, and then you can obviously continue up on the western side of the well, staying on the Special Rules West, but route on the western side of the 12 Apostles, routing towards Tabor Mountain, and then come back to Cape Town through, or getting permission from a supply, just as an example. Okay, so I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying that you must do this type of flying. I'm saying you need to be aware again of your airspaces, and don't just imagine that this is a Special Rules with this one line just coming down the center, and as long as you fly to or stay within 50 nautical miles to the west or east of that center line, that you just broadcast on 125.8 or 124.8 and just go flying into yonder. You need to be very aware of your geography, of the surroundings, and of your vertical limits. All right. This explains in detail again the FAR 39. It's giving you information. It tells you in this case it's a naval base, and that again, no person shall, without prior authorization, fly aircraft into this area. So the difference between the previous slide with the FAP and the FAR is it says you can get permission to fly here, but in order to do so, you have here contact the commanding officer in Simonstown, Silvermine, or of any person designated by him. Okay, should say by them. So that gives you an idea that there's, in terms of the airspace design, there's procedures for each, whether it's controlled or uncontrolled, and you need to manage that accordingly. Right, so please stay with us for a live question and answer session should you have any related questions. And I did unfortunately miss out on one section, which was on the Kontermanskloof area, and I'm not in charge of this recording with this machine that I'm trying to work from, so I'm going to mention it briefly in my live session. I'll talk about it outside of this recording. So looking forward to chatting to you all in due course. Thank you very much for attending. Please also just listen out. We've got some amazing offers that we're including during the live Q&A session.